What if I told you that the secret to success isn't working harder, but doing less? Most people spend their entire lives hustling, grinding, and pushing themselves to exhaustion. Yet at the end of the day, they're stuck. Their bank account isn't growing fast enough. Their career isn't skyrocketing. No matter how much effort they put in, they're not getting the expected results. Why? Because we've been lied to. We were taught that hard work equals success. But if true, wouldn't the hardest working people be the wealthiest? Wouldn't those pulling 12-hour shifts be financially free? The truth is that 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts. The world's top 1% don't work harder. They work differently. They focus only on the smallest actions that create the biggest impact. And here's where it gets even more interesting. There's a hidden layer to this principle that even the most successful people often overlook. Master this, and you'll never approach success the same way again. Stay with me. In just a moment, I'll show you exactly how to find your 20% and use it to transform your work, money, and life. Most people are trapped in an endless cycle of wake up, work, grind, and repeat. They check emails, sit through meetings, and cross off tasks. Yet despite all this effort, they barely move forward. Why? Because they're following the wrong blueprint for success. Think about it. If success was just about working harder, why aren't the hardest workers the richest? If grinding for 12 hours daily was the answer, why do billionaires work differently? The truth is, a tiny fraction of your actions create the majority of your results. This is the 80-20 principle, and it's not just a productivity hack, it's a universal law. It shapes everything: money, business, relationships, and even happiness. The world's most successful people don't waste time on things that don't matter. They don't fill their days with distractions. Instead, they identify the few actions that create the biggest impact and double down on them. And if you don't understand this, you'll spend years working on the wrong things, burning yourself out with little reward. But if you do, you'll unlock a shortcut to achieving more by doing less. But here's what most people miss. There's an even deeper layer to this rule that separates the ultra-successful from everyone else. And in just a moment, I'll show you exactly how to apply it to your life. By the way, if you want to unlock powerful success secrets like this every week, hit that subscribe button now. But first, let's break down exactly how the 80-20 principle works and why it might be the most powerful idea you ever learn. Chapter 1. The brutal truth about success. Most people believe success is about working harder. If you hustle long enough, push through the struggle, and grind your way to the top, you'll eventually break through. But here's the cold, hard truth. That's a lie. If hard work alone created success, wouldn't the hardest working people be the richest? Construction workers, nurses, factory employees. They work exhausting shifts, yet they're not the ones flying private jets or living in mansions. Now look at billionaires, entrepreneurs, the top 1%. Do they work hard? Sure, but they work differently. They understand something most people overlook. Not all effort is equal. A Harvard study found that in nearly every company, just 20% of employees drive 80% of the results. These are the top performers, the salespeople who land the biggest deals, the creatives who produce the most impactful work, and the strategists who make the best decisions. The rest? They're just filling time, attending meetings, replying to emails, and doing busy work that feels productive, but accomplishes very little. And this isn't just about business. It applies to everything. 20% of your clients create 80% of your income. 20% of your habits determine 80% of your success. 20% of your friends bring 80% of your happiness. Yet most people don't see this. Instead, they spread themselves too thin, wasting time on low-impact tasks that barely move the needle. If you focus on everything, you achieve nothing. Imagine trying to start a fire with sunlight. If you spread the light over an entire field, nothing happens. But if you focus it through a magnifying glass on a single point, it burns. The most successful people understand this. They don't chase every opportunity. They don't drown in distractions. Instead, they identify the few things that actually matter and double down. Success isn't about doing more. It's about doing less, but choosing the right things to focus on. So now the real question is, how do you find your 20%? That's exactly what we're about to uncover. Chapter 2. How to find your 20%. Now that you understand the 80-20 principle, the next question is, how do you find your 20%? How do you determine which tiny fraction of your work, habits, or relationships create the biggest results? Let's look at the world's most successful people. What do they do differently? Steve Jobs didn't try to create 1,000 products. He focused on just a few, like the iPhone and MacBook, that changed the world. Warren Buffett doesn't invest in every stock. He focuses on a handful of high-value investments that generate almost all of his wealth. Amazon earns 80% of its revenue from just 20% of its products, including bestsellers like Kindle, Prime, and AWS. The secret? They don't spread themselves too thin. They focus on the few things that move the needle, and you can do the same. How to identify your 20%. Step 1. Find what brings the biggest results. Look at your work, your business, your daily routine. Which small actions generate the biggest wins? If you run a business, which 20% of your customers bring in 80% of your revenue? If you're in sales, which few leads convert into actual deals? If you're learning a skill, which habits improve you fastest? A freelance writer might realize that just 20% of their clients bring in 80% of their income. They could double down on high-value clients instead of wasting time on low-paying gigs. Step 2. Eliminate low-value work. The most successful people ruthlessly cut distractions and delegate things that don't matter. Ask yourself, what do I do that someone else could do? Are you answering emails that don't grow your business? Sitting in meetings that don't drive results? Micromanaging tasks that someone else could handle? Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, built a business while working only a few hours per week by outsourcing 80% of tasks that weren't worth his time. Step 3. Identify what's wasting your time. Be brutally honest. How much of your day is spent on things that feel productive, but lead nowhere? Mindlessly checking social media, sitting in unnecessary meetings, responding to messages that don't matter? Most people stay busy but never move forward because they prioritize the wrong things. Here's the key. The top 1% don't just understand the 80-20 rule, they take action on it. They don't waste hours every day on busy work. They don't say yes to everything. They cut distractions mercilessly. And here's where things get even more interesting. The 80-20 principle doesn't just apply to productivity, it also applies to money. Because if 80% of your results come from just 20% of your effort, what happens when you apply this rule to building wealth? That's exactly what we'll uncover next. Chapter 3. The 80-20 Money Formula. If the 80-20 rule can help you get more done in less time, imagine what happens when you apply it to money. Because here's the truth. Wealth doesn't come from working harder. If it did, the people grinding 60-hour shifts would be the richest. But they're not. Instead, the world's wealthiest leverage the 80-20 rule to multiply their income. Warren Buffett. 80% of his wealth comes from just 20% of his best investments. Amazon. 80% of its profits come from just 20% of its products. Elon Musk. 80% of his success comes from a handful of high-impact projects. Tesla, SpaceX, and Starlink. Most people obsess over small money wins. They clip coupons, cut out lattes, and track every expense thinking that small sacrifices will make them rich. But the truth is, the world's wealthiest people don't get rich by skipping coffee. They focus on the big money moves. Instead of cutting expenses, they focus on increasing income. Instead of saving a few dollars, they invest in assets that multiply over time. Instead of chasing tiny raises, they develop high-value, indispensable skills. A software developer who learns AI or blockchain can increase their income by 500% instead of working extra hours for a small raise. Not all income is created equal. Wealthy people understand that 80% of their money likely comes from just 20% of their skills, connections, or investments. They don't waste time on low-return efforts. They identify that as 20% and double down on it. A business owner figures out which products generate the most revenue and stops wasting time on everything else. An investor narrows their portfolio to only the highest-yielding opportunities. A top consultant focuses on only the most valuable clients instead of trying to help everyone. And here's where things get even more interesting. If 20% of your money decisions drive 80% of your wealth, what happens when you apply the 80-20 rule to itself? If you take the top 20% of your best money moves and apply 80-20 again, you'll find that just 4% of your financial decisions are responsible for 64% of your wealth. That's the real secret. The ultra-rich don't just apply 80-20 once. They keep refining, cutting distractions, and focusing even further. Instead of diversifying too much, they invest in the few assets with the highest return. Instead of working more hours, they focus on scaling and automating income. This is the real difference between the top 1% and everyone else. Most people linearly think about money. I work X hours, I get paid Y dollars. The rich think about money exponentially. How do I earn X while working less? Because if 80-20 applies to wealth, it also applies to success at an even deeper level, and that's exactly what we'll uncover next. Chapter 4. The hidden layer, 80-20 of 80-20. If 20% of your actions create 80% of your results, what happens when you apply that principle to itself? This is where things get interesting. Inside every 20% of high-impact actions, there's another 80-20 hidden within it. If 20% of your work creates 80% of your success, then just 4% of your efforts could drive 64% of your results. If 20% of your investments generate 80% of your wealth, then just 4% of your decisions could be responsible for almost everything. This means that success isn't just about focusing on your 20%. It's about constantly refining, eliminating distractions, and doubling down on the few things that matter most. The world's top performers don't just cut some distractions, they keep cutting until they reach the highest value activities. Elite athletes don't train for everything. They focus on the few movements and techniques that give them the highest return. Billionaires don't chase every business opportunity. They invest their time and money into the handful of ventures with exponential potential. Top CEOs don't fill their schedules with pointless meetings. They identify the few key decisions that will drive the most significant impact. More effort doesn't equal more results, but more focus does. Most people think they're making progress because they're busy, but busyness isn't effective. The ultra-successful think differently. They know that within their 20% of high-impact actions, an even smaller fraction, their personal 4%, truly changes everything. Right now, a small handful of actions are responsible for most of your success. But within that handful, an even smaller group drives the majority of those results. If you can identify it and relentlessly cut everything else, your progress will skyrocket. Most people waste years trying to do everything. The ultra-successful focus is only on what truly moves the needle. And here's the real shift. The 80-20 rule isn't just a strategy, it's a mindset. Once you see the world through this lens, everything changes. Your productivity doubles, your income explodes, your stress disappears. Because you'll no longer be trapped in busy work, you'll be doing less but achieving exponentially more. So now, here's the challenge. What's the one thing you'll eliminate today to focus on your highest impact 4%? Here's where things get even more fascinating. The 80-20 rule is fractal. It keeps repeating itself at deeper and deeper levels. Think about it. If 20% of your efforts drive 80% of your results, then within that 20%, there's another 80-20 hidden. That means that just 4% of what you do might be responsible for over 64% of your success. And if you refine it even further, 0.8% of your actions could create over 50% of your results. This changes everything. Most people focus on eliminating distractions at a surface level. They cut out unnecessary meetings, reduce social media time, or delegate minor tasks. But they stop too soon. The ultra-successful go deeper. They keep refining and doubling down until they identify the 1 or 2 actions that have the absolute biggest impact, and then they put all their energy into just those. The difference between average performers in the top 1% isn't just effort. The best of the best have figured out exactly what to focus on, and they eliminate everything else. So here's the question. If the true power of the 80-20 rule lies in going deeper, what happens when you apply it to your own life and goals? What if you stop working on things that barely move the needle and only focused on the 1 or 2 actions that truly matter? If you do, you might unlock a level of success and freedom that most people will never experience. The key to success isn't doing more. It's doing less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. The 80-20 principle isn't just a productivity hack. It's a universal law that affects everything from wealth and business to relationships and happiness. Here's what we've uncovered. 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts. Most people waste time on low-value tasks instead of focusing on what truly moves the needle. Hard work alone doesn't lead to success. Smart, focused work does. The 80-20 rule is fractal, meaning you can refine it further to find the top 4%, driving 64% of your success. Most people will hear this and go back to business as usual. But the people who truly apply this knowledge change their lives forever. Drop a comment below with the one thing you'll cut from your life starting today. I'll be replying to the best ones. If you found this valuable, you'll love Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek. It's a game changer for escaping the grind, automating income, and designing a life of freedom. I highly recommend checking it out. If this video helped you, please subscribe so you never miss insights like these. Remember, success isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter. See you in the next video.